Dear viewers, welcome to another mathematics lesson. My name is Khalid Jallo, and in our previous lesson, we've talked about trigonometric ratios, and we are going to continue. We are going to talk about trigonometric ratios. If you can recall, we've talked about sine. How do we use sine? How do we use cos? And how do we use tan using SOHCAHTOA? Using SOHCAHTOA. We said sine of an angle, the sine of probably, if we are dealing with angle theta, is equal to the opposite divide the hypotenuse. That is for sine. Also, we said the cost of an angle, assuming it's angle theta, is equal to the adjacent divide the hypotenuse. And also we said tan of an angle, say angle theta, is equal to the opposite divide the adjacent. These are the three trigonometric ratios that we've talked about in our previous lesson. And again, in this lesson also, we are going to center our discussion on them as to how to find angles, how to find sides using these trigonometric ratios. We are going to use the idea of using sine, the idea of using cos, and the idea of using tan. So looking at the first one that we have here, we are given a diagram. It's a right angle triangle, and we are given one of the angles equal to 25 degrees. We are not given the side that is opposite to the angle, but we are given the hypotenuse of, and we are also given the adjacent side as x. Now let's find the length of side x in this case. That is the length of this side. The side that we are looking for is adjacent the given angle, and the given length is the hypotenuse. That is the side that we are given. That is the side that we are going to find is adjacent to the reference angle, and also we are given the hypotenuse of the length that represents the hypotenuse. Again, we are also given the formula to find the cost. They said cos is equal to adjacent all over the hypotenuse. Remember, now look at it. We are asked to find the adjacent, and we are given the hypotenuse with a reference angle. Now, looking at SOHCAHTOA, which one of these do we have all its information? For the sine, we have the opposite and the hypotenuse. Are we given the opposite? No, we are not given the opposite. Now for TOA, which is tan, we are going to make use of the opposite and the adjacent. Are we given the opposite? No, we are not given the opposite. So here we can only find the cos of the angle, which is the adjacent divide the hypotenuse. We are finding the adjacent and we are given the hypotenuse. So what we can use is the cos. So cos is equals to adjacent divide the hypotenuse. Here we have the solution. Remember, the formula for the cos is adjacent, that is this side, divide the hypotenuse. In doing so, we said the reference angle is 25 degrees. And the side that we want to find is what? Is x. And we are given 9.0 as the hypotenuse. The formula we have, cos is equals to adjacent all over hypotenuse. If you cross multiply, this is over 1. If you cross multiply, you are going to have adjacent is equal to hypotenuse multiplied by cost of the angle theta. Now, since the adjacent is x, then we are going to have x is equal to, the hypotenuse is what? The hypotenuse is 9.0, and cost of the angle theta is 25 degrees. So that is why we are going to have x is equal to 9.0 multiplied by the cost of the angle, which is cos 25. Well, this is going to give us x is equal to 9.0, which is the hypotenuse, and cos 25 is equal to 9.1. Cos 25 is equal to 9.1, and 9.0 multiplied by 0.9 rather, I mean to say cos 25 is equal to 0.91. 0.91. Then 9.0 multiplied by 0.91 is going to give us 8.2. Therefore, we can conclude that the side that is adjacent to our reference angle, which is angle that measures 25 degrees, is equal to 8.2. Again, we are asked to find the unknown side here, which is x, and we are giving a reference angle, and also we are giving the other side, which is the hypotenuse. Because we are asked to find x, and looking at the information that is provided, we have the adjacent and the hypotenuse, and it is cos that gives us the adjacent and the hypotenuse. So cos of the angle theta is equal to the adjacent of that angle divided by the hypotenuse, which is what we use in this formula. Cos of angle theta is equal to the adjacent divided the hypotenuse. Then we cross multiply there to have the adjacent of the angle is equal to the hypotenuse multiplied by the cos of the angle. Now the reference angle there is 25 degrees and the hypotenuse is 9.0. So we have 9.0 multiplied by cos of the angle, which is 25 degrees. So it's 9.0 multiplied by cos 25. And when we simplify cos 25, we have what? We have 0.91. 0.91. Then 9.0 multiplied by 0.91 is going to give us 8.2. Then our x, the value of x there is equal to 8.2. We look at this other one. Here also we are giving a triangle. We are given two sides and one of them is x. Here the angle given to us is 50 degrees. And the side that is opposite to the angle is what? Is x. The side that is adjacent to the angle is 9.0. Again, we want to find what is the value of x. Now, what can we use to find what is the value of x? We can only use three ratios. We have the sine, we have cos, we have tan. Now, we can use one of them based on the information that is given to us. Like if you use SOHCAHTOA, SOHCAH and TOA. Now in order for us to use sine, we should be given the opposite and the hypotenuse. Is that what we are given? We are given the opposite and the adjacent. Here we have the opposite and here we have the adjacent. So it means we cannot use sine. How about cos? Now cos, in order for us to use cos, we will have to have the adjacent and the hypotenuse. Again, we are given the adjacent, but we are not given the hypotenuse. That means we cannot use cos. And finally, we have tan, which is TOA. In order for us to use tan, we will need the opposite and the adjacent. And what are we given? We are given the opposite. We are asked to find the opposite given the adjacent and the reference angle. So it means in this case we are going to use tan. That is why we have the formula here. Tan theta is equal to the opposite side divide the adjacent side. Tan theta is equal to the opposite side divide the adjacent side. That is exactly what we have here. Remember, this is the reference angle. And this is the side opposite to the reference angle, which is the value that we are going to find with its x. And here we have the adjacent side. Again, we know that tan theta is equal to opposite over adjacent. Tan theta is equal to opposite all over adjacent. If you cross multiply here, you realize that the opposite is equal to the adjacent multiplied by the tan angle theta, which is opposite is equal to the adjacent side multiplied by tan theta. And theta there is equal to what? 50 degrees. Theta is equal to 50 degrees. The adjacent side is equal to 9.0. 0, and the opposite side is equal to x, and that's what we want to find. So substituting that, we have opposite is equal to what? X, adjacent 9.0 multiplied by tan of theta, which is tan 50. Again, if you simplify tan 50, you are going to have 1.2. So we are going to have the adjacent multiplied by 1.2, which is 9.0 multiplied by 1.2, and 9.0 multiplied by 1.2 is going to give us 10.8. 9.0 multiplied by 1.2 will give us 10.8. So it means the value of x in this case is going to give us 10.8. The value of x in this case is going to give us 10.8. When you have the reference angle as 50 and the adjacent side is 9.0, then it means the opposite side is going to give us 10.8 using tan to solve the question. Now we look at this other question. It says find the value of x in the nearest 10. Find the value of x to the nearest 10. Now let's look at the diagram. We are given a right angled triangle and we are also given a reference angle, which is angle 64 is our reference angle. Now angle 64 is opposite to side that measures 35. So it means we are also given the opposite. We are asked to find x, and x is what? Is on the adjacent side of the given angle. So x is on the adjacent side. X is on the adjacent side. Now let's look at the information that is given to us. We are given a reference angle. We are given the opposite side of the reference angle, and we are asked to find the adjacent side of the reference angle. So what can we use? Remember, we are given options, but later we will solve the question and then come and see which option is correct. Now, what are we going to use? Are we going to use sine, or we are going to use cos, or we are going to use tan? In order for us to do that, let's simply write the SOHCAHTOA that reminds us about the formulas and see which one is best applicable here and use it to solve the question. Like we have SOH, which is SOHCAHTOA. TOA. Now what are we given? We are given opposite and adjacent. So which one here has opposite and adjacent? For the first one, sine has opposite and hypotenuse. Cos have adjacent and hypotenuse. Tan here have opposite and adjacent. And we are given the opposite and we are asked to find the adjacent using the reference angle that is given to us. Now then there it means that we are going to use tan. And then we know that tan theta is equal to what? Is equal to opposite all over the adjacent. Tan theta is equal to the opposite all over the adjacent. Now again, if you cross multiply, we are going to have, the opposite is equal to the adjacent multiplied by tan of angle theta. That is tan theta. From there, what is the opposite? The opposite is equal to 35. The adjacent is x, and theta is equal to what? E theta is equal to 64. So we are going to have the opposite, which is 35. 35 is equal to, what is the adjacent? The adjacent is x. And that is going to multiply tan theta is equal to what? Theta is equal to 64. Tan of 64 degrees. This is what we're going to have. From there, we have 35 is equal to x. Now, what is going to give us tan of 64. That is going to give us 2.005. So what we have there is 35 is equal to, which is the opposite, is equal to x, which is the side that we are trying to find, which is the adjacent, and tan of 64 is going to give us 2.05. So there we are going to have 35 is equal to 2.05x. In order to have x alone, we are going to divide both sides by 2.05. So this is going to give us 35 divided by 2.05 is equal to 2.05x divided by 2.005. So again, 2.05 will cancel 2.05, and we have x is equals to, when you divide 35 by 2.05 is going to give us 17.07. So x is equal to 17.07. But what do we are asked to find here? To the nearest what? To the nearest tenth. So we are going to approximate that to the nearest tenth. And if we approximate it to the nearest tenth, we are going to have x is equals to 17.1. To the nearest tenth, our answer is going to be 17.1. So let's look at the options. If we have any option that has the answer 17.1, yes. Option C is 17.1. Therefore, our correct answer there is option C. You move on to another question. Here also we are asked to find the value of x to the nearest what? To the nearest tenth. Again, we are given a right angle triangle, and we are giving our reference angle as 36 degrees. And the side that is opposite the reference angle is also given to us, which is going to be the opposite. And also we are given the longest side, that is the hypotenuse. So again, we want to find the value of x. In order to find the value, remember we are given options as well, but then we'll have to do our own calculations to see if we will have the correct answer. Now what are we given? We are given a reference angle, we are given the opposite, and we are given the hypotenuse. What we have is SOH, CAH, and TOA. Now what are we given? We are given opposite and hypotenuse. Now for sine, of course, it is opposite and hypotenuse. Obviously, it means we are going to use sine. We cannot use cos because cos is asking for adjacent, and we are not given the adjacent. We cannot use tan because there is no adjacent. We are only given the opposite and the hypotenuse. So it means we are going to use sine. So there we have sine theta is equals to what? Opposite divide the hypotenuse. Sine theta is equals to the opposite divide the hypotenuse. Now we know that the hypotenuse is equal to what? The hypotenuse is equal to x, which is the value that we are trying to find, and the opposite is equal to 28. And theta is equal to 36. Theta is equal to 36. So what are we going to have? We are going to have, let's try to cross multiply here to have everything in a linear form. This divide 1, if you cross multiply, we are going to have the opposite is equal to the hypotenuse multiplied by sine of angle theta. Multiplied by sine theta. Here we can have, what is the opposite? The opposite is equal to 28. You have 28 is equal to, the hypotenuse is what? The hypotenuse is x multiplied by sine. What is theta? Theta is equal to 36. So we have sine of 36. Now we are going to have 28 is equal to x multiplied by sine 36 is going to give us 0.5878. 0.5878. So if you multiply, you're going to have now 28 is equal to, multiplying x by 0.5878 will give us 0.5878x. 0.5878x. In order to have x alone, we'll have to divide both sides by x, by 0.5878. So we are going to have 28 divided by 0.5878, which is equal to 0.5878 x divided by 0.5878. This is what we're going to have. So 0.5878 will cancel out. So we are now going to be left with x is equal to 28 divided by 0.5878, which is going to give us 47.64. 47.64. And we are asked to leave our answer in the nearest tenth. So approximation that we are going to have x is equal to, nearest tenth, the digit is 6. Digit after is 4 less than 5, so we could add 0. So we're going to have 47.6. So the x value in this question is 47.6. Now looking at the options, option D will give us the correct answer, which is 47.6. That is going to be the value of x in this case. We look at this other question which says find the value of x in the nearest tenth. Again, we are given another triangle. We are given the reference angle, but then we are not given the opposite side of the reference angle. We are given the adjacent side of the reference angle. We are asked to find the hypotenuse. I meant to say we are given the hypotenuse and we are asked to find the adjacent side, which is x. Now, looking at SOHCAHTOA, which of these do we use? Sine, cos, or tan? We have SOH, CAH, and TOA. Now, what are we given? We are given the adjacent and the hypotenuse. Adjacent and the hypotenuse. We cannot use sine because we are not given the opposite. We cannot use tan because also we are not given the opposite. But we can use cos since we are given the adjacent and the hypotenuse. So cos of the angle, that is cos of angle theta, is equal to the adjacent divide the hypotenuse. The adjacent divide the hypotenuse. So we know that the adjacent is equal to what? X, which is the value that we want to find. And we are given the hypotenuse as 7.4. The hypotenuse is equal to 7.4. And theta is 37. Theta is equal to 37. That's angle theta. Okay. Now, cos, let's try to cross multiply to have everything in a linear equation. If you cross multiply, this is divide 1. If you cross multiply, you are going to have the adjacent is equal to the hypotenuse multiplied by cos theta. That is cost of the angle theta. Remember we said theta is equal to 37, the hypotenuse is equal to 7.4, and we are asked to find the adjacent, which is equal to x. So now we are going to have the adjacent, which is x, is equal to, the hypotenuse is 7.4. So we are going to have 7.4 multiplied by cos theta. Cos theta is 37 degrees. So we are now going to have x is equals to 7.4 multiplied by. So what is cos 37 degrees? Cos 37 degrees is 0.37 0.7986. 0.79886. 0.7986. Again, we move on. Now we have x is equals to 7.4 multiplied by 0.7986. 0.7986. Then x is going to give us, when you multiply 7.4 with 0.7986, our answer is going to give us 5.91. So again, if you are going to round this up to the nearest tenth, we are going to have our x value is now going to be to the nearest tenth. Now is going to be 9. The digit after it is 1. Less than 5 we add 0, so in this case we are going to have 5.9. Our x value, which represents the adjacent, is equal to 5.9. and if you look at our options, option A is 4.5, option B is 5.1, option C is 5.3, and option D is 5.9. So our correct answer there is going to be 5.9. That brings us to the end of the lesson. So you will see exercise 3.4 and exercise 4.3 and exercise 4.4 of the geometry worksheet to your homework. On that note, I thank you all for your attention.